We're falling behind schedule. Stan was even saying, so last week and this week, one item versus 7.
It says here, click on green number 1, mean square. I think they need that up there. Number 1. Click green number 1. Gets rid of
They're not even trying to find a secretary, you know? Nothing.
How about taking the tape of it and just handing it to the
He wants me to take minutes so he can run the meeting.
You want to the lights running and
Don't sign? I don't know. I mean, I know they're up.
just gets rid of the
Does the zoning board have a secretary?
I mean, all the wiring was in the
Probably
meeting.
someone.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of
All right, let's rise for the pledge, please.
electrifying the box and then get the DOT to synchronize the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would think by next week.
Okay.
We'll do roll call. John Kopis is asked to be excused. Lawrence Korzaneski.
Here.
Joseph Keefe. Here. Rebecca Anderson. Here. Anthony Gorski. Here. Stanley Kiza. Here. Chair Conley's here. I think I'll skip the introduction. We just need to take care of some administrative items, and we'll go on to seeker. First, let's approve the minutes of the February 2nd meeting, finally. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. I did. There was a date change that we made. Any changes or comments on the February 2nd minutes? If not, can I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Keefe has agreed to help me with minutes today. Thank you. Now let's look at the minutes of the March 2nd meeting, the last meeting. Any changes, deletions, comments regarding those minutes? If none, can I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Okay. Motion, second.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Okay, communications list. I did leave on your desks, one of the communications was a letter that I sent. Hopefully I have it listed. To Lori Bracci Hat. Yeah, I don't see that listed, so I'm going to add that to the end of the list, 3.16.17. It's response from Neil Conley. To Lori Bracci Hat. Regarding the Tim Hortons on Transit Road.
Larry.
And traffic on Transit Road. Near Michael Anthony. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, then at this time, we'll do the seeker, the State Environmental Quality Review for Andersons. This is an unlisted action.
I thought we had a public hearing at 7:05.
Not till April 6th.
Oh, okay.
We had, originally it was March 16th, and we had to change it to April 6th.
Okay.
as per the attorney's office. It's my understanding that this seeker considers the whole project, correct me if I'm wrong, which would include the interior renovation, the drive-through, lane modification of existing outdoor patio space, and modification of existing parking lot. Since it's unlisted action, we can use the short form. Which I had all ready to go, and now I can't find it.
I can't find mine either.
Here.
Thanks.
I've done the one. I got it here.
All right, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No? 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
No.
3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. We do not have a critical environmental area. We'll go to number 5. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Small impact? Or would you think there's a large impact there, or possibility of a large impact?
You're going to have the same amount of cars that are just going to be going through the drive-through instead of parking.
There might be a few more, because people, we can drive through now, but I can't see it making any impact on
The
time.
way I understand it is the changes are being made to facilitate continued business at the current level of patronage. Because they're switching, we've kind of switched over from sitting down and eating to more of a drive-through.
And we haven't done a site plan yet either, so this, we could address this at the site plan level. Sir, are you from Anderson's?
I still think
Do
it's
you have any
small.
comments on that one? It's
Can't see
about,
it.
will there be an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway?
I don't think so. In the one store that we do have drive-through in, 50% of the business goes through the drive-through. It does do more business than our location on transit. I think it would help our day business. That's basically why we're doing that, because during the day, the lunch trade isn't very strong there. So we're hoping the drive-through encourages that a little bit. So it might, I don't know, there's a lot of places around there. So we're hoping it might increase, but we're not sure.
I think it's small, no matter what we say. I don't think it's going to get to moderate
Okay,
to large.
yeah, according to the form that we use, no or small are basically the same. Any notation we need to make there?
I think we just made it.
Pardon me?
I said, I think we kind of covered it.
I think if anything, if we get more traffic from that, somebody else is going to lose a little bit. Because there's so many restaurants around there and so many drive-thrus. So I don't, overall on transit, I don't think it's going to do a thing.
Matt, do you have any comment on that?
I don't think there's any impact on traffic without a traffic study that counts.
How about biking or walkway, though? No?
Public facilities are already
Ed, any comment?
No, I don't see a major impact at all.
All right, then we'll say no or small impact there. Number 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. 7, will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies? Public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources?
No,
No.
no.
10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No.
11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? Not unless they eat too much ice cream.
No such thing.
Can we have a motion for a negative deck?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
And the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried. Okay, that's the end of our agenda items, I guess, for tonight.
Where are we with the site plan for this project? Are we we're still waiting on information? Yeah. There was the cost agreement for the Value Plaza, right? There was an agreement for using that they were to provide us regarding driving in and out of Value Plaza to cross access.
I believe that's already in place.
Is that in?
The parking agreement between the two parcels.
Parking.
From the zoning perspective,
Yeah, that's there, and they have access to Michael.
Yeah, they both have access.
and then all they really need to do is set a public hearing for a special use permit.
Okay. All right, so we go to some discussion items. The first one, I have the topic listed as Architectural Review Board. During our last meeting, it became apparent that perhaps there is a need for this board or potentially an independent board to exist regarding design standards in the town. So I got into some research and Googled several towns and found a lot of differing models. One town I found, the town of Newburgh, had a 75 pages of guidelines. I think they had a consulting firm come in and they made these guidelines for the Architectural Review Board. However, their Architectural Review Board was the planning board. So they functioned as both. And it was...
Does it have to be, I would think it would have to be a separate meeting, though, no?
That I didn't get in deeply enough, but I read enough about the guidelines and stuff that it seemed like they were on solid legal ground. The planning board acting as an architectural review board, ARB, we're calling it.
A lot of times when that happens, it ends up happening in areas with, I'll say, historical significance.
Newburgh would be one of them.
So I would say the village of Lancaster proper would probably fall into that type of...
Well, one of the other towns that I looked into was the town of Orchard Park, and they had an they actually called it an architectural overlay district, which consisted of 7 members, and that concentrated on certain areas of the town. North Buffalo Road, I think, just outside of the village, and I can't remember, there were 1 or 2 other areas that were specifically mentioned. I was trying to think. Oh, there was another town I looked into where they had 5 members, and they actually required that there be 1 architect, 1 engineer, 1 town board member, and whatever else. So there were stipulations as to who could be on the ARB, and some of them met once a month, and others met on an as-needed basis. I would think as needed would be good enough. So that's my early research on this topic. Anybody have any comments?
Did you look at Hamburg?
I did not.
Town of Hamburg's had some success over the years at getting commercial structures to be changed to fit more of the character of the town. The Walmart there looks like the golf course building.
Briarwood?
Yeah,
Briarwood?
yeah, if you notice the golf,
Yeah, the facade of the building is
the
not
facade of the
typical
building.
Walmart.
And they got the orange sign off of the big orange box building. It wasn't orange. I don't know if it still isn't orange, but at the time it was built, it was not orange. So they've had some success, but I don't know if they had a board or a professional planning department.
All right,
And
something to look at.
They had a professional planning department, now that I think about it.
I know that the city of Buffalo has certain districts where if you're changing windows or you're renovating, that they look at window colors and specific design guidelines and all that kind of stuff. I know years ago when I worked at a different firm, town of Clarence, we were building a Rite Aid on the corner of Main and Sheridan where that triangle hits. And they were very adamant that it needed to be changed from the prototype because it was in the town of Clarence. I don't remember if that was a separate board or what, but there was no way they were going to approve it until the design was a little more effective in their eyes.
Well, they're doing that with the Dollar General.
But I would think you'd have to do that. I don't think I wouldn't think legally it would be permitted in an entire town, but maybe it would, I don't know.
Is that legislation adopted just through the regular town code or through the zoning portion of the code? There are municipalities like the city of Buffalo adopted their green code, which is a level of form-based zoning. The village of Lancaster right now is reviewing their zoning code, and they're leaning in that direction of form-based zoning, where it doesn't focus so much on the permitted uses, but what the building sizing, scaling, design is really going to look like.
I thought
I'd be interested to see which one of those communities are in that direction and what others have different legislation that has an architectural standard.
I thought the village in Lancaster here already had certain restrictions on things like signage, the kinds of what's allowed, the height, that kind of thing through this downtown district.
You're correct. In the central business district, there are specific design standards for those features, but they're looking to expand that into other portions of the village, not just to focus all the attention downtown, but even the surrounding communities, as it relates to commercial occupancies.
I don't know, Matt, where those lie in those, but I do know that they're out
Maybe
there.
a couple of years ago when the city of Buffalo adopted their green code, which essentially is
I think Elmwood Village in the city might even have their own little guidelines, just because it's a village within the city of Buffalo. And they're trying to, in certain areas, they're trying to restrict what things look like.
Is Hurdle Avenue the same thing, changing over a little bit? When something new comes in, do they have design standards that looks different
Yes,
from what it used to look like?
correct.
Well, Elmwood would be like a situation where it's a particular district, right? They're not incorporated as a village, but they, have a whatever community organization or three that.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it, and you could do it as overlay districts. I mean, you've got, like Bowmansville area, you may want one look, and you may want something else in the Bowen, William Street area. I mean, so you could do it by district, you could do an overlay district, different areas.
One of the things, though, I think that was the impetus for this, of course, was the project that just came up to us last week. And so there might be one community desire for a not standardized appearance, but a range of what would be considered acceptable in a historic area like downtown in the village. But with regard to the rest of the town, there might still be, things that the community might prefer either to see or not to see. And, you know, I mean, it would be a little bit more, I would think it would be a little bit broader than what they're talking about, or what they have in place already here, because it's historic.
And I don't know how restrictive you would want to make the code. I mean, I think you'd want the board to have some flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to say it's got to be this color and this height.
Right,
You don't want to be that.
I think without having that defined in the code somewhere, the requests that were being made of Dollar General, I could totally understand where she's coming from. This is the look that people recognize for our store. We don't want to change it. They don't want to spend any more money than they have to.
Yeah.
So without something written in the code that we have the ability to dictate that, I don't know that you can legally dictate that.
Well, I did hear that one town, I don't know if it was in this article or not, I read the article, but it was a while ago. They really weren't on solid legal grounds, so they kept tabling the project. And that was how they were getting around it, because nothing wrong, you know, come back with something better, or we're gonna table it.
Yeah, to me, that,
Proponent comes in and says, there's a certain set of rules you put, I've obeyed that, I've designed it to look like something that is within the rules, and now you're moving the goalpost because you want a different design. Can you force me to do that? No. Can we ask you to do it? Yes. If you don't agree to do it, where's the hammer to force them?
Especially when it pertains to branding.
Right.
You know, there's some,
Right.
they have some specifics. They have the dollar amounts down to, you know, size of the building and how it's going to be built. So they have a good control on their investment. So as I said, you know, it was briefly discussed with our zoning upgrade, but there were other things that needed to be addressed rather than the architectural looks of the building or the direction of how to design the structures. Yeah, a pretty good study in some municipalities that have specific boards outlined, how they adopted it into their law, and whether or not it's tied specifically to the zoning portion of the code. I think it's going to be a great start here.
you might want to take a quick look at Jamestown too, because I know they've got a heart of Jamestown that probably has some, Jamestown or even Fredonia, you know what I mean, those,
Dave,
I'm not saying I disagreed with the comments, but I'm not sure that we can how much of that we can legally dictate the way we're set up as a planning.
No, I think you and Larry both pointed out, unless it's in writing, you know, ahead of time, and it's not deemed as, you know, restrictive unto the point of curtailing business, then, you know, if we don't have that written down ahead of time, then we don't have nearly as much ability to, you know, influence what goes on there without it being challenged legally.
Even if it's written down, I mean, I'd have to read some of the other ones. Let's face it, aesthetic is very much in the eyes of the beholder, and where does that interpretation start, and how far can it go, or where does it need to stop?
It sounds like that's an excellent question for
You know what I mean?
these communities that already have ARBs, right?
yeah. Well, I was going to ask Dave, perhaps you could take this back to the town board during a work session or something, and see if this is something that they would like us to pursue at the planning board level. I don't think it's going to happen, you know, right away, but we could get on it as quickly as we can if we are given that charge.
The other thing that you'd have to determine whether you want to get involved with is, you know, as an ARB, it's not just new projects. Do you want to get involved with somebody who comes in and wants to renovate their building? Which typically wouldn't come before the planning board. You know, if they're just coming and just wants to, you know, do something to the building.
Yeah, that might be it.
I think maybe
It's adding more work.
I think we're report later on in the meeting of some projects that are coming up that will be of very good interest to this board. Towards the end of when we're getting ready to wrap up.
I mean, you could potentially, Matt, somehow you could potentially tie that to what level of alteration is it deemed per the building code, you know what I mean? You know, if somebody's doing alteration level 1, which might not make sense to all of you, it's minor changes, it's not structural, it's minor modifications, probably like what Anderson is doing on the inside. You can do a certain level when it's considered a minor alteration, and then the more you do, it kicks in all of the building code. So maybe you could somehow tie it to an alteration level 3, and once you get to alteration level 3 and you're doing exteriors, then maybe you could have a say in what the exterior looks like.
Yeah, so I'm thinking there's gonna be a level there, you could say, okay, we want some input here.
I would think that we would not want to get involved in the interior all that much, if at all.
No,
The interior?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, not at all.
no,
It's already regulated.
it's regulated by the, yeah. And it's not regulated aesthetically in the building code, but as far as what the components are,
In some cases, you could change the aesthetics of a building. The interior climate, the interior layouts, and add speed, rest, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Will definitely determine the
I'm thinking,
yeah, but it's not gonna change what color paint's there, or what type of statues are put up, or,
I mean, a good example, even though it wasn't in the town, is when the, what's the restaurant there that burned a couple years ago? Yeah, Yellow and Go. I mean, there's one that they changed the exterior when they rebuilt it now. That's not in it's in the village, but if that had been in the town, that may have been something the town would, an ARD would have said, wait a minute, we want to have some input, what you're doing here, you're changing the appearance of this place.
right.
But it only got better.
Well, I agree. Yeah, that's fine. Not bad. Yeah. But, yeah, 'cause we're out on Ransom
Everything
Road.
Broadway, Central, Walden,
Yeah, Bowmansville.
Bowmansville.
Yeah. I was thinking Dollar General in particular, it's on Broadway, but it's pretty close to the village, you know, I mean, you're coming into the town, it's something that you'd really like
You got the
it to
project.
look nice.
You got the project going right in the other corner, right next to it. You got two projects
Right.
next to each other.
I was just there today, driving, I pulled into the Dollar General, empty vacant area, just pulled over and took a look, you know, there's I believe it's the house next door.
Well, there's a garage on the lot, then there's a house.
Yeah, there's a house next door that's been there for forever. And then there's the deli next door that looks fine. It's kind of rustic looking, but it, you know, I mean, it's not,
It's a little generous, but okay.
well, you know, but yeah. Then there's gonna be stucco and pole barn type Dollar General. And is it gonna affect the character of the neighborhood?
To me, the issue with those big box stores is, they're big box stores, and they don't really need to be that big.
This one, I mean,
They
Dollar
don't
General
really
is-
need to be as
They
tall
don't
as
need
they
that tall,
build
yeah.
them.
They don't need the height.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they're not climbing up on ladders to store stuff on shelves.
How tall is this one?
If that was a 10-foot ceiling height, you could probably have an overall building height of 14 feet instead of 24 feet, which would make a huge difference on what that looks like in certain lots.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
But that fits their prototype, and they're not gonna change their prototype unless you have a
Well,
hammer.
even if you
make
don't
that
have the
change.
tall ceiling, you'll still have the tall facade in the front, because it looks like every other Dollar General, and you see it without even having to think about it. That's where I'm going.
They have normal sized
big
doors, but they need that height for their Dollar General sign.
It's yellow.
It's yellow.
Stick out. You really have to look at it. Just
Yep.
really see it yellow, it's sticking up and stuff.
The one on Southwestern Drive in Orchard Park has a yellow sign, but it's small. The building is, it's not a flat roof building, but it would have been like gable end towards the road, and you enter from this, what would be the side, and it's got, made to look like brick around it. It's got windows with mullions, it's got awnings.
Those windows are fake.
They're fake, but they're
Yeah.
made to look like windows, you know? But that's the point. That's the whole point of a little bit of spiff it up. And the car wash part, we kind of went through the car wash a little bit and said, what is it gonna look like? whether or not ever gets built. And I remember we talked about, you taught me about the gable ends of buildings facing the road that are just like empty. And
Looks like the end of a building.
yeah, and we convinced some of the developers to come in
Do
to
something a little bit.
spiff it up a little bit, and they did.
The apartments on Como
Right.
that ended.
Exactly.
Can you want to turn it 90 degrees, or maybe one set of the apartments facing Como? Instead it looks like a racquetball wall.
But the ones that were going to be near the Depew High School that aren't there, we
That's the
convinced them to put in something on the end, some landscaping and stuff. He thought it was a fine idea. They didn't build them, but, you know.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I mean, we don't know what Dollar General's gonna come back with. They may come back and say, okay, we can do this, this, and this, you know?
Yeah, hopefully. but, yeah.
She had done her homework, and she said, well, I read the code and it wasn't in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so where do we stand on that? We're going to take that to the board, and
See if there's,
I'll try to do a little more research if anybody else. I don't know if we're ready for a legal, I guess we got to figure out how to get that into the code if we want to move forward. Transit Road, I wanted to see where we were on this, if anything has changed. I've been receiving some correspondence. One in particular was regarding the Tim Hortons on Transit Road south of Michael Anthony. When that was first approved, there was no left turn, I believe, and signage was removed. There was a pork chop, concrete island, and I think that caused some issues, and so they removed it. I don't think I was on the board when this happened, but I remember hearing about it.
Yeah, I was
Yeah. But
back in,
as far as you remember, Larry, Rebecca, did it come back to the planning board? I didn't think so.
no, it never came back to us to take that center drive.
All right, so the research I found, it looks like the state DOT basically signed off on it, and the code enforcement officer from Lancaster signed off on making those changes.
The state,
Because it wasn't safe at the time.
state DOT signed off on it after they saw something from the town sign.
right. But I thought it didn't come back, but certainly nobody came and presented, but I remember Stan asking about it. Would you people be violently objecting if somebody came in because there were people that were just making the left anyway and taking out, you know, the undercarriage of their
Right,
cars and stuff?
there were numerous car parts left behind. Because,
So what was happening wasn't safe, but then
Right.
so they took that out, but then that created a different situation. Now that makes it worse for Michael Anthony because those cars get into the center lane and back up, and then the people trying to take a left out of Michael Anthony have to go through the center lane basically, and it's,
well, they're also making left-hand turns out of Tim Hortons.
Right,
Across Transit, because the original
Yeah.
purpose was that Tim Hortons was going to be a right turn in and right turn out only, and that's the purpose of the center.
It's kind of why you have that side entrance onto Michael Anthony, right? It's so that people can leave Tim Hortons and make a left from Michael Anthony like everybody else from Michael Anthony.
You know, same thing.
I saw somebody there tonight who thought she could go, and she was about to make a left out of the Tim Hortons, and the next business to the south of there, I don't remember what it was, there was a car that was making a right, two SUVs actually, and they both left.
It's a medical office.
Well, that person was either a little bit quicker or a little bit more aggressive.
Apartments right next door to.
There's
Apartment
apartments.
driveway, and then there's the medical building.
Right, so yeah, you could potentially have 4 people making lefts or 2 people making lefts, 2 making rights, and meeting in the center lane of Transit Road.
There's an identical situation at the McDonald's in front of Walmart. That's a right-hand exit only. The curb is elevated, and you just can't make a left-hand turn out of it. There's another restriction at Tim Hortons, at Genesee, and Harris Hill. The sign's been removed. It goes up and it comes back down, so that people do not make a left-hand turn to go south on Harris Hill. But they do it anyways. And without the enforcement, without the incidents there, it just happens.
Because people recognize that it's not a sign that's put
Nobody's
out.
looking, so I'm gonna go. And that's where, you know, that's where the public safety aspect of it, really needs to get a little harder.
concept the sign? It looks like usually a handmade sign made by Tim Hortons.
It's just it's part of the parking lot signage
Right.
features, but, you know, Cloud takes it out, or who knows what. You know, it was there, it was part of their approvals.
Or some people recognize that's not enforceable.
They make sure.
Well, we're an advisory board, as you all know, and, but are there any recommendations that we can make that can make this situation better? I mean, Ed, I know they were looking at the road in the behind. I don't know exactly where that goes, I have to admit, I'm not sure.
If you go in
where-
Michael Anthony, all the way to the back, Michael Anthony goes in, and then it's just basically a loop.
To that Queensway or?
Yeah, right, and that just kind of loops around and comes back out to Michael Anthony. There's no, in the back of Michael Anthony, there's no exit. You know, you can only go in and out Michael
Right.
Anthony from transit. There is a stub road to the north off of Michael Anthony that was built.
That goes towards Panora there?
Correct. And then it just stops. I mean, it was never developed.
I mean, it's nowhere near Panora, but,
Well, it is.
well,
South Panora. Yeah.
South Panora, right away.
Right where the-
All the way to it.
oh, it's right in line?
Yeah.
I didn't, okay.
Yeah, that's why it was done that way.
Okay.
But South Panora was never built.
Isn't there like a radio tower?
Yeah, there's two, I think.
There's a couple towers back there off the road.
Okay.
Cell tower.
So if you extended the road, they wouldn't pass through the?
No, you can extend the road from William to Michael Anthony. The town owns the land.
What's the distance, any clue?
Yeah, it's probably close to 1,000 feet. The first couple hundred feet of South Panora is paved, but you'd have to build 1,500.
The infrastructure and the.
Yeah, you know, the road, the curbing, the drainage. There's wetland, but you're not disturbing enough of it that you can get a nationwide to do the wetland, get to the wetland. A lot of it's already been, I mean, there's a dirt road that goes all the way back now. I mean, that exists. It's been cleared and leveled and graded.
Well, they have to have access to the tower.
You know what, that would, I don't think that would solve the problem, because then you're gonna get the people on the far end of South Panora that are gonna say, I live in that dead-end road, and I don't want the road.
There's only like 4 houses though.
I know.
Yeah, but what's it gonna do to William
That's
Street?
the same argument on Woodgate as well, because that's that.
Yeah, Woodgate
Would easily connect, but we have to look at public safety. Emergency response is going to lead all discussions on that topic. I mean, to go all the way around William Street Transit Road, you get to the Valley area, when there's an incident there, and they can easily come up through Aurora Street through the neighborhood as a secondary access.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as it is,
Woodgate, you can connect to Woodgate.
you could, yeah, Woodgate could go through and connect too. You can make 2 connections back there.
Woodgate can go east, goes east-west.
But I mean, right now, there's a fire in the back of Michael Anthony in a house, and the transit road exit is blocked for some reason, and the house is burning down. You're not getting to it.
There's portions of the fire code that trigger sprinkled residential buildings beyond,
It's not that far.
I don't have the number exactly, but
But it's not a long distance.
it's not a long distance.
I guess my point is that Michael Anthony doesn't want any more traffic there, but I don't think they're gonna wanna connect it either.
No, I don't think so either.
Well, you know, you want a solution?
Would get more traffic.
Because there's a light at South Panora
It's impractical.
on William, and that's being improved. That'll be an improved intersection.
Right.
Or if you made it a one-way out. Nobody could come in to Michael Anthony, but they can. I'm brainstorming.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Get them to do right turn only.
I mean, I had a long meeting with DOT and about a light, and they're all for the access management on transit. They're not going to do any. They're not going to do anything to make it happen, but they'll support the town in doing it. It's a lot of work. It's a couple years worth of work if you're going to do something. And the whole reason you would do it is to funnel traffic to Michael Anthony at transit, so that the thought process being that you would funnel enough traffic so that when you did new traffic counts, you would have the traffic to put a signal there. No guarantee. You could do all this work, do the counts, not meet the criteria, and DOT's gonna say, no light. But they did the same thing. Before I went into the meeting, they had looked at it and they said, well, why isn't this connection made? And I said, well, hey, I brought it up, so the residents, you have to ask the resident, are you asking for your convenience to turn left, or are you asking this for safety? And the answer is, you should be answering it for safety. If it's safety, you make the connection and go to William.
My other suggestion, because of the left-hand turn, now we have, is the light going on yet? I haven't even.
It's not on, it's up. My guess is maybe by next week.
I heard, yeah, there's
There's no
still
Wi-Fi.
a whatever, introductory period where it flashes yellow until the, locals become accustomed to knowing that there's a light there that may,
Rather, this slow traffic down. In the village of Pugh, in front of Pugh High School, it's 30 miles an hour, 20 during the day, and then it goes up to 45. People start picking up speed once they get out of the village. If you moved it down to 35 all the way to Transit French. So you at least try to slow down traffic, because there's been a lot of accidents. I don't know if that would work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a,
You could petition it.
Yeah, it's a-
You have to get Chickawaga to agree too.
yeah, you have to petition the state DOT for that.
I mean, as long as we're talking about it, not that I'm necessarily in favor of, but you've got, is it West Seneca, Southwestern, not south, well, it'd be south of West Seneca, right? The Orchard Park, right? That section of Southwestern, after you get across the bridge, they just dropped that from like 50 or 55 down to
It's 45.
45. That happened. It ramps up, so it goes from 40 to 45. Once you get across the bridge, then it was 50, and then you went for a quarter mile, and then it was 55. And a whole long stretch of it that was 55 is now 45 because they've got developments on either side, and people bought the house, but now they're unhappy that they can't get out into traffic.
I'm not saying go down to 30, but I think we potentially lower it to 45.
Those speed changes along that stretch were a result of fatalities.
A lot of
in traffic incidents.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is part of the formula that DOT uses. And there's been a lot of bad accidents on transit, but fatalities, few. I mean, that's just, unfortunately, it's part of the equation.
We rented that apartment complex across the street in the Chickawaga side, and we don't know what's going on yet with the forestry project. So we just, just like I said, it's an idea. Some people are born.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy, all it takes is a resolution and a letter from the board, get the same from Chickawaga and send it to DOT. I mean, you have to send it to DOT at that point, it's in their hands.
I think you'll get a lot of support, and maybe even from the Cheektowaga side, because it's just based on what I've read and comments on social media, there's a lot of, or maybe those are the only people who are making any comments, but there seems to be a lot of, frustration with the traffic situation on that stretch.
And not to be a jerk, but you go in front of the Pew High School, those cops sit right there, the Pew cops, they're dealing with people all the time. For going over the speed limit. You do that a couple of times in the town.
The other thing the other thing that will happen, you're not going to know that the light's functional at Delta Sonic, will change the traffic pattern out there a little bit. Because it'll create what they call platooning, because once the traffic gets stopped on transit coming north.
Much and then nothing. And
Yeah, and there's a gap, all of a sudden people can get out. So, once that light goes in, and, it's a good time of year, it's going in the summer, so the car wash is busy. I've gone out there a couple of times and just sat there and kind of watch what's going on with traffic maneuvering. It'd be interesting to see how much of a change there is, because there will be some.
If I understand what you're saying or what you're implying, is that light just at that location will end up creating openings and gaps for several streets on either side.
Oh yeah, big time. And that can be played with. I mean, they can play with the timing of that light, if you want. Yeah, they can make it a little bit longer red on transit, so the gap's a little bit longer. I mean, there's things that DOT can tweak on that once the light's functional. I expect it to probably be functional. My guess is next week. They're doing the layering now. Like I said, it'll flash yellow for a while. They'll have some temporary signs up that say signal to become active with some date on it.
Okay, where do we go from here? Anything we can do, or do we?
Well, I think if the board wants to recommend the connection to Panora, that would be a recommendation to the town board to think about.
I think it really needs to be a holistic approach, though, as to how we're thinking about access management on Transit Road. I mean, we're just looking at one street that's connecting to Transit Road. We just had a project in here last meeting. They're adamant about keeping the driveway, but this code says you have to justify that distance from the other driveway through trip generations. So these dimensional features of entryways into driveways are determined by the peak trip, maybe the right terminology, the peak hour trips. For instance, if you generate 150 peak hour trips, the minimum driveway spacing is 300 feet. The more trips, the larger the spacing. So there is justification for removing driveways. It's in the code. So being familiar with that and looking at all of Transit Road in its entirety when we're considering these things is huge. It really is.
We are going to talk to Kohl's. I've got to call into them to make a connection from Park Lane south into Kohl's parking lot. And it's a short distance. I mean, it would be and I think Park Lane would do it. It's their property. They actually recommended it. And I think that they would probably do it at their cost. But that would allow people in Park Lane to turn south into the Kohl's parking lot. And there's a drive lane kind of across all the way to the light at Delta. So that anybody from Park Lane who wanted to go south could make that maneuver.
So it sounds to me like we are doing some
It's a slope.
holistic thinking here, you know, like a little bit here, a little bit there, and it's
Yeah.
going to...
Well, I think the holistic aspect is, it's an overall goal that is, you know, in the back of our mind with each project, but we're doing it one piece at a time. I don't know if you can do it any other way than one piece at a time.
No.
Their opposition to that, removing it, obviously, because people are used to it, but that runs against what they're saying, how long it would take for emergency vehicles to get there.
An extra 30 seconds.
Right. No
If that.
apartment is gonna burn down, or business
It's
is.
a fully sprinkled building. It's not
Right.
going to burn.
I still wanna see how they're gonna be dumping out those bank people from right in the middle of their parking lot for tenants.
I mean, the biggest issue is I know the resident who wrote the letter, I can't remember her name, Lori. I mean, her whole push has been she wants a light at Michael Anthony in Transit. And, you know, and no matter how hard you jump up and down and scream and yell.
Well, she also thinks that we should go back to the signage
At Tim Hortons?
at Tim Hortons.
Well, to be honest with you, that's kind of a legal issue, because how did it come down?
Right. It seemed like it was, how can I say it?
I don't think it ever
Unilateral?
came, I don't think it ever came before the board, but it was one of those things where there were so many either accidents or complaints or people who couldn't make lots that it got the attention of the DOT.
Yeah, no, like I said, the correspondence from DOT was, they said, you know, if the town's okay with it, we're fine. And they got a letter from the town that said, we're okay with it, so they said, okay.
I checked the minutes from 2007 and 2008, and I couldn't find anything other than the original,
Right.
which was in 2007. I wasn't on,
There was no action from what we could find from the town board either.
no.
So it sounds like it, however it was done, it didn't come back before the board. It was,
But again, legally, can you go back 15 years and say, oh, by the way, that was a mistake, put it back? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't,
Well, we can't take down the Tim Hortons on Weldon and Central. And that's my closest Tim Hortons. I mean, I like it.
that might be illegal.
Yeah,
Something legal that we need to look at, I don't know.
I don't, if the state DOT didn't have an issue with it, and there is supposedly approval, I'll say, from the current CEO at that time, I don't know if you could make them go back.
That's
It's a legal question.
That doesn't say, that's a legal question.
if they have a letter from us, I think they're probably going to win the court case. It doesn't matter whether or not the town violated its own rules. From their perspective,
That's a good point.
They're in compliance.
Yeah.
because They
Yeah.
have,
They have something from the town that says it's okay.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
not legal opinion. But
All right.
Yeah, if they came back in, they wanted to do something at Tim Hortons site, then you've got them, then you've got them,
Then, as
soup
long as
to
you're
nuts.
making something structural outside,
Yeah, doing anything,
or parking or anything.
anything, any modification to the site.
Well,
Well, Dave, again, maybe you could check with the town board and see if there's any desire to open up that back road by Panora Street.
How much traffic would that dump onto William? Because William can't handle more.
That's the problem. There's going to be ramifications somewhere else.
Well, I would say a lot of the traffic that's gonna go that way is gonna go that way to get to transit. That's why it's being put in,
No,
to make it safer to get to transit.
if
Definitely turn
I
lanes
knew
there
that I
and
could,
You could turn off of transit onto Michael Anthony and go around and get to William, yes.
yeah, I could see,
But then you're going to William anyways.
Well, I'm
You're just
thinking-
cutting the angle off.
I'm thinking of people who are coming north on Transit, cut through to avoid the intersection of Transit and William.
That's
Right.
To go eastbound to
Yep.
all those
Right, but
subdivisions.
they would have been going that way on William anyways. You're just cutting the angle off.
you're cutting more than
You're
just
not-
the angle
I know,
off.
but you're not adding traffic to William,
You're gonna get more people,
right? You're not gonna add traffic to William. If they're going to William, they're going to William. How they get there, the traffic on William isn't really changing.
more traffic to Michael Avenue.
It'll actually it would make things easier at that intersection with William, but that stretch of William where it goes from Transit down to, then William becomes, 2 lanes there, up over the rise, and you gotta go past Orville's.
That's all being expanded, rebuilt.
Yeah, I don't think, second thought, I don't think that's going to work out. Then they'll be upset about all the traffic going by them, and
Well, you're gonna have somebody upset about that.
Yeah, I agree.
People going down Michael Anthony, Queensway, if we went towards Woodgate, trying to Woodgate, people would be mad about that.
Yeah, I mean, and you can do stuff in the subdivision to discourage cut through. I mean, you can put speed tables in, you can do stuff in there, so it's not a nice, zip through at 50 miles an hour.
Correct.
When I go from my house to the gym on French Road and Transit, there's 11 stop signs for me to get from down Lake Avenue through Country Farms and then cross through.
and how many do you stop at?
All but one. There's one I'm never gonna stop at because it's an illegally placed stop sign.
What, on Shannon Forest? It's on
It's on the
It's
corner.
in the middle of nowhere.
All it needs to be is an arrow there. So I just treat it like, it doesn't
Every
exist.
time I go to it, why is this sign here?
Well, I don't stop at it because I'm hoping I'll get nailed and then I will make it come down because that case has already been held downstate. The precedent has been set. It was in the magazine we got.
Civil disobedience.
Gotcha. Somebody call Ken Graver.
It's already been tried in New York State. So if someone, and the town had to take their stop sign down on the curve of the road.
You're such a rebel.
I know, I hate the stop sign, so I just don't stop it.
All right, why don't we move on?
It's illegal.
I just want to bring us up briefly. Mike Metzger has contacted me, and there's a situation on Bradley Drive in Blackstone, and there's a disagreement between him and the town, basically. Matt, maybe you could explain that situation? Sum it up, anyway.
There's acreage at a dead-end street that's looking to get improvement, and it's in the best interest of the town to properly terminate that road, rather than administratively issue a building permit at a dead-end street that will hinder services to that residence. Division Street was the exact situation. The Daniel Drive property went through administratively with weeping and gnashing of teeth by anybody in every department in the town after the fact. It was too late. Fortunately, the owner did provide a turnaround easement area to satisfy the highway department's snow plowing operation. But, garbage trucks backing up down the road to pick up the trash, school buses can't get down there. It's raw land that's looking to be improved. One lot, mind you, but it's still looking to be improved.
So what do you mean by the town needs to properly terminate the road?
Turn around, cul-de-sac, loop street, anything so that an emergency vehicle can get down there and get back out. A school bus can do the same, garbage truck can do the same, snow plowing operations without having to back up 500-600 feet onto a county road to turn around.
So that's the town's responsibility to do that?
That's the developer. I feel it's a developer's responsibility. If they're going to improve the road and extend utilities to service the lot, they can at least provide the turnaround for that roadway. Properly terminate that street, as with every other development in the town.
Are you talking about
Where's this?
Bradley?
And the person that's,
Bradley?
wants to develop that is not willing to do that?
No.
The idea is that right now, garbage trucks come in and they back up, and he feels he's being, why should the last lot owner be the one that has to,
Give up the real estate to do the turn?
yeah, and do the turnaround when it,
Because he's at the end of the road.
yeah.
I mean,
I,
Don't.
I get it, but when I talk to him, he makes sense too. You know, it's one of those situations where, but I don't think we have any recourse. Would they come to us as like a subdivision type thing, or what?
Oh,
I mean,
no, it's a site plan.
Site plan?
It's a site plan, I mean.
'Cause it includes the-
As the Division Street application is, they were only looking to put a single-family residence there, but again, you know, fortunately, there was a floodplain on the lot, so you can, you know, 2 or 3 items under the site plan review requirements that would force the applicant to this board, but the reality is, it's a dead-end street, specifically Division, too narrow to be a town street, and it needs to be improved in order to service that building, as well as maintain service for the existing occupancies. I mean, what's to prevent a developer from purchasing the acreage, mitigating the wetlands, putting in a cul-de-sac and having 5 lots, 7 lots, permissibly? Those are as-of-right uses.
Is this, what street is this parcel?
Bradley,
Bradley,
it's right next to it. Blackstone.
South of Blackstone.
what is it? It's,
Somebody tried to put a,
But it's,
Half of that mother parcel was joined to the Blackstone development to create those lots.
I was gonna say, is partly on Blackstone, and then
Blackstone subdivision used the northern half of the remaining portion of this parcel, which is going to segue nicely into my next discussion. And that portion, 6 acres, 9 acres, whatever that is left in it as an exception to the Blackstone development. It's not a part of the map, it's just left on its own undeveloped land.
okay, and
He's got six acres, you said?
Something to that, I don't know exactly.
Because at one time off Bradley-
There's a large area of wetlands.
What would he give it up to just get a turn?
It's not, the property is there because no one wanted to invest in the improvements there. You could mitigate the wetlands there.
now wait a minute, are you on Bradley or are you on another?
Yeah, back.
So there's wetlands
Oh, yeah.
on that parcel that the person wants to develop?
Yeah, and that's why they lopped off that, I mean, there's a portion of it on the northern part of that parcel that was a part of the Blackstone development that has wetlands that are outlined, or boundary, or marker, but they were split and sold with several lots that are on Blackstone Court.
The lots on the south of Blackstone Court, back into that wetland.
Yep. Bradley's been there forever, right?
Yeah,
Bradley's
Brad-
an old,
Bradley,
It's
they,
been
one
there for a
time,
while, and
they came in one time off Bradley, they wanted to put apartment buildings back in there. And the only entrance is, you go up Bradley, you make a right, you'd be right in the apartment complex, 126 units or 270 units or something like that. And that got denied for a number of reasons, but one, it was just too damn congested coming up Bradley to Harris Hill. The other places that this builder had built on, or developed rather, was like, he was looking at how beautiful this is. Yeah, but you're off Southwestern. You're not coming off a residential street.
So is it defined in our code that person buying that land would know that what would be required to even build a house there?
it's in the code.
there's a portion of the code that leaves the discretion to a code official for the intensity of use, whether or not it needs to get in front of this board for site plan. And again, now this is 7 years, and I'm hearing from a department head that operates and maintains town roads, the police department, the trash facilities. I mean, this is a continued discussion, even in approved subdivision lots. Hidden Pines with a T-turnaround. There was, and the documentation was presented, and it was shown that no, in fact, the highway superintendent did not tell you it was okay to do this. it's gonna, I'm afraid it may end up in a legal discussion.
And our town attorney did issue an opinion and agreed with our code enforcement officer.
And look, it's not to be difficult, it's just to make sure that everybody there can be serviced correctly.
I'm not sure what Mr. Metzger wanted me to do. I have no legal authority to change anything, but.
What was his request again?
Well, I think he's trying to convince us that this should be just a single-family
Building permit.
building permit, and,
And no T-turn.
yeah,
I'm
and he offers very convincing arguments, but our attorney has agreed with the code enforcement officer, and I think we're going to be bound by that, and I'll tell him that. I think that's the end of that. So you want to segue right into the...
Yeah, I'm coming across now almost on a daily basis. Parcels are just being created willy-nilly. They're filing deeds down at County Hall. I'm getting applications in my office for building permits. There's no approval by the town board for any of these lots that were created. Bradley being one of them. They created a development, parceled off land, left this remaining piece allegedly as a buildable lot, but it's not. It doesn't have a road. Part of the road frontage being argued as this being a building lot is perpendicular to the right of way. So 66 feet of the road frontage is perpendicular to the center line of the street. And they're trying to incorporate that as being part of the road frontage, 75-foot minimum. So it's great, and it doesn't simple. The other day, we received a complaint where a contractor went in and clear-cut a lot that was created on William Street. It's LA 17.
Oh.
I just got an email this afternoon from the enforcement officer. The DEC is going to issue the notice of violation to this owner. This owner bought the lot from the previous owner that illegally created this lot. We have two of them in the court setting now that are going on 2.5 years. I'm not going to issue a building permit on them because nothing was vetted. It was not approved. And it just goes on and on and on and on. It just never ends. It never ends. And I'm not sure whether or not legally as a town we can petition the county clerk's office. The forms that are used to file these deeds specifically call out whether or not the municipality has zoning requirements for subdividing land. The box never gets checked. And yet, we're 2-3 owners later, I have to tell a homeowner, I'm sorry, I can't issue a building permit.
Can't build it.
Because your lot is created illegally.
Right.
Well, how do you justify that? They've been paying property taxes on vacant land for 3, 4, 5 years on a lot that was created illegally. It just causes all kinds of grief that is really unnecessary. So that's the parcel splitting conundrum that, again, it's almost daily right now that I'm dealing with that sort of
So
thing.
what can we even do to solve that, though?
Notice of violation, order to remedy, get into a court setting. I'm having discussions with some legal counsel about forcing the parcel to be added back onto the original piece. I know the upstate rebar property right now is being marketed as a 7-acre lot in the corner of Walden and Town Line Road. It's a 45-acre parcel. There's no lots split off of that corner piece. And they're surrounded by, pocket residential homes on both Walden Avenue and Town Line. And they're marketing a 7-acre parcel that legally can be used as a public storage facility, anything permitted in a light industrial district, surrounded by 7 or 8 residential homes. It doesn't make sense. So, anytime somebody calls and inquires, I beg them, please, before you sign a contract, make sure the tax parcel is created legally, or at least sign a contract contingent upon obtaining an approval for a lot split. It's that important.
Yeah, the issue's at the county level, because they're not checking. So they go ahead and do the deed filing, and then the SBL gets created.
So couldn't the town hold the county responsible somehow if they're approving something that's not buildable?
They're not approving it, they're only filing
The
a deed.
bond.
The attorney's
They're only recording a deed.
The attorney creates the deed, takes it in,
So the
file
attorney
this.
takes the heat.
Slimy, slimy
The
attorney.
attorney's gonna be the one that takes the heat.
Yeah, the buyer should go back to his attorney and say, what you do?
Yeah, I've got a home that's built on a lot that is illegal.
What if there was a sign off? Like if you're splitting a lot, that before you can get the county to agree to file the deed, there has to be a written sign off by the town. I mean, it's the box is one thing. I'll have
There's
to
a
go check
disclaimer
boxes.
on the form that's used for filing, RP 17, I think is what it's called. And in the fine print, right? The fine print, there's a box, because the local municipality has zoning.
Are you talking about the check box or a
It's a
verbiage
check
box?
And there's also
A
verbiage at
verbiage
the bottom
box.
of the.
And no one's paying attention. Okay.
It's just not happening.
When you said a box, I was confused. Okay.
So if they're not checking the box on a legal form, how can it be a legal?
Because the verbiage at the
Filing.
bottom of that form states that all the information on this form is
Accurate and correct.
accurate and not, it's not false, and they're signing off. I mean, like I said, I'm getting some counsel from all different portions of the legal world, and 6 of one, half a dozen of another, it all depends on what side of the discussion you're standing on.
So the town doesn't become aware of this until somebody shows up at your door, or calls or emails and says,
Yeah, or the assessor gets an SBL number, and says, oh, I got a new tax parcel.
well, that's my next question, right? So the clerk or the assessor gets an SBL,
But by the time it's
And-
filed.
but they can alert you or
That's when the
legal,
notification goes out, is when I'm alerted by our assessor.
Yeah.
And then there have been several, Erie Street, Lake Avenue, where they've created non-conforming lots. They're too small for the zoning district. So they have to give the notification, have those conversations, and subsequently, some of them had not transferred title yet. And they were the parcel back to its original size.
Sounds to me like besides the verbiage in the checkbox, there should be another form required
It's called.
from the town of Lancaster that it is a buildable lot
It's the
before they
approval by
can
the
split
town
it.
board. It's the resolution that approves the minor split, the minor subdivision of the lot.
Sounds like the real estate professionals don't really do a lot of homework either.
Or they just want to make the sale.
Yeah, they'll make the sale and who cares later?
Again, creation of the flag lots, we got to go through that whole scenario with the flag lots again. It didn't meet the minimum standard of the zoning district that the parcel was sitting in. Although, at the county level, for jurisdictions that don't have standards, it's perfectly legal. The 288 lots, I think it's called. As long as you're not violating the realty subdivision approval law by subdividing 4 lots or more, you don't need to violate that, or read this for me. Anyway, I don't want to labor the time and take too much of your time, but just a couple of updates and some projects that are coming in. Speaking specifically to the facade, we did receive yesterday renovations to 4779 Transit Road, directly behind the Forest View rezone application at Plaza. They're going to redo the whole facade. And then eventually the interior portions, because there's some fire safety issues on the interior of the units that need to be addressed. But you know, they've been having that discussion for quite some time, and finally got drawings for that facility. Yesterday, I also forwarded emails to you regarding an existing occupancy that's putting an addition on the building. They started with building permits. They stopped them. They have to get in front of this board. It's 1,000 square feet. Get in front of this board and amend the site plan, and then move forward with that project. But as of a month ago, there's lumber sitting out in the weather right now. The trusses aren't going up, and it's just a stop project. So it is coming here.
It's more than
Well, and
Where is that?
4401,
4401.
Which is where? Help me out a little more.
pretty far out.
Well, no, it's down between Ransom and Cemetery, the tile shop, it's the old tile shop facility.
I don't remember where it was, but I did see a pile of trusses sitting somewhere.
That's gold.
Apple Rover has not started yet.
I noticed a DEC official at, on William Street today.
That's what they were looking at, that lot, that clear cut.
Yeah.
LE 17, yes.
I saw that. I didn't see them there. They weren't there when I went by. But
National Grid, they've cleared most of their site, I think, now at this point. They're getting ready
that
for
is
it.
National Grid? Okay.
On
'Cause-
Cemetery, the one on
Yeah,
Cemetery.
that's separate.
One on
Yeah.
Cemetery.
No, I know. Yeah, but
Across from callbacks.
I've seen
There's
that.
a lot of trees now.
Well, they said they were going, well, it's a pretty big site there.
Yeah, I know, I
Yeah.
didn't realize 55,000 square foot building is pretty darn big.
Yeah,
We didn't do our ERPOD,
they left, they left the front, they said they were going to.
but we didn't have our ERPOD in place.
When you don't think about it, it's sad.
Matt, is the Brazen Brewery stalled?
No,
No?
They're brewing.
they're kind of, they're at the will of the industry.
Oh,
Materials.
supplies and-
Hard to come by.
Yeah.
Contractors are hard to come by, and it's difficult without a major general contractor that has control over subcontractors. It's very hard to get people to show up and actually, but it's coming. Less time.
Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks, I did sit through a ton of training. The solar and battery energy storage. Fortunately, we did get our code updated when we did. It could be tweaked at this point now because the technology is a lot better. There are other classifications of sizes of solar facilities. So we'll make amendments to our code. We did FEMA training today on non-levy facilities. It's a beauty, but you know, the industry is coming with that technology, so it's best to be ahead of it with our zoning law so that we can facilitate the project as it comes. Stormwater conference is next week, Tuesday.
Next week.
I went through the webinar today. Probably didn't say that right.
Oh, the AG?
I couldn't get on, so I ended up doing it on the phone.
I couldn't get on either,
Yeah,
so
it was-
I never did get on.
I just had it on my phone and kind of, listened and did some work,
I had a-
Having login difficulties,
Yeah.
and a lot of the applicants, you had to re-log in.
I sent her-
Email and such.
I sent her a note finally and said I'd give up.
Yeah, I tried for a long time.
45 minutes, and finally I realized I've already lost half my credit, so.
When they send the slides, I'll be happy to forward those to this board, all the boards, just to get an understanding of what the ag districts are, what is allowed, what isn't allowed. It was,
They're consolidating the districts now. or
yeah,
something. I
it's
could get
consolidating,
that out of it.
updating on the regular cycle and what have you, but, a lot of it was a verification of what was already suspected, and, they solidified a lot of what our own code, our right to farm code is, and, so it's good information.
Okay.
I'm trying to catch up with Chuck Malcolm from Hodgson. I got a question for him regarding two of our subdivisions, Stutzman and Seabird. They're both POS-decked.
Yes,
Stutzman, we have a draft scoping document, basically, that went back and forth, never been officially adopted yet. And Seabird, they never have done anything past the POS deck. And my question to Chuck, I haven't got an answer yet, is, how long does it stay in that limbo? The site plans, once the site plan's approved, the applicant's got 2 years to do something, or he's got to come back before the board again. So that's my question to Chuck is, because seeker is silent on that, there's no time frame under seeker. So my question to Chuck is, how long does the town wait before they say, start over?
or go away.
Well, start over, but because things have changed. Now, the one thing that we can, this I did find out, the one thing that has changed since they made application is that the overlay districts have been placed. And that is a change that we can go back to them and say, you now have to address these overlay districts.
They are all in place.
Yes,
All right.
they weren't when they first came in. Because the question was, could you change the zoning? And you really can't. Once an application's been made, you can't change the zoning can't pull it out from underneath the person
Yeah.
once he's made application. Unless there's a timeout, and that's what I'm trying to find out. How long does the town have to wait? 10 years, 5 years, it's been a couple of years at least.
There is a shot clock on certain approvals.
Yeah.
For subdivisions, if they haven't filed their map cover, it's a 24-month approval. Then there's a time limit on the approval for preliminary plat, if the final plat has not been filed.
That's assuming the preliminary plat's been approved.
Assuming the preliminary plat was approved.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but there are some time limitations on the duration of the review and the approval, but I think that puts the onus on the town to act within a certain time
Yeah,
frame.
60 days, 90 days, whatever, yeah. And, yeah, so if I get an answer, I'll let you know. I'm just trying to figure that out. But at a minimum, we could certainly send a letter to both applicants stating that the town has new overlay districts that are in place, and they need to be addressed as part of their application. Now, part of me says, you don't want to kick a sleeping dog and write a letter to them and say, oh, by the way, we haven't heard from you, what are you doing?
Right.
So, but, so we can just sit back and wait till we do hear from them and say, oh, by the way, we have new overlay districts.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that approach either.
Right, that's what I'm saying, go either way.
All right, anything else? I think we're all set. Okay, I'll move to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Turn that off.
My secretary.
Did you make the second, Larry?
No, standard.
Okay.
Question for you on the ethics form that we have to fill out, because it's asking for questions, it's asking for info like employer, that kind of thing. But I think, well, I want to double check what they mean by, proprietary interest versus, like, I get paid, oh, I'm sorry.